For generations, the wealthiest families in the world have followed a strategy so simple that most people never notice it. It does not begin with a bigger salary. It does not require working harder. And it has almost nothing to do with budgeting, saving, or picking the right stock. Yet this single approach has allowed fortunes to survive wars, recessions, political change, and the passage of time itself. Meanwhile, millions of people spend their entire lives chasing wealth without ever understanding why money seems to flow toward the same families again and again. The secret is not hidden in a bank account. It is hidden in ownership, because the truly wealthy do not focus on making money. They focus on controlling the systems that produce it. 500 years ago, Machiavelli understood a timeless principle of power. The strongest strategy is the one people do not realize is being used against them. And while most people are taught how to earn, save, and spend, the wealthy are taught something entirely different. A stealth wealth strategy. One that quietly compounds influence, control, and wealth across generations. Today, we are pulling back the curtain. Here is what nobody will tell you. Your financial education was not incomplete by accident. It was incomplete by design. Every rule you were taught, max out the 401k, buy the index fund, save 15%, pay off the mortgage, every single one of those rules was written by an industry that needs you to follow them. The banks, the brokerages, the retirement platforms, the entire advice apparatus. They do not profit when you build invisible, untouchable, multi-generational wealth. They profit when you trade, when you rebalance, when your assets sit in accounts that generate management fees year after year. Visible, countable, taxable, extractable. You are not the customer of the financial system. You are the fuel. Read that again. The visible game is a machine. It converts your labor into their revenue. And the most dangerous thing about this machine is that it convinced you the game was fair. That a 401k and an index fund and a paid-off house was the finish line. That if you just worked hard enough, saved enough, invested sensibly enough, you would be fine. The machine taught you to focus on earning. It never mentioned architecture. Because architecture, real, permanent, multi-generational architecture, generates almost zero fees for the machine. The machine wants you visible. It wants your assets discoverable. It wants every dollar of your net worth sitting in an account with your name on it, generating a small, quiet stream of revenue for someone else. And you complied. Not because you were foolish, because you were never shown the alternative. There are exactly two ways a fortune can end. Cornelius Vanderbilt died in 1877 as the richest American who had ever lived. His fortune was approximately $185 billion in today's terms. 50 years later, not a single Vanderbilt appeared on any list of wealthy Americans. The family's 10 Fifth Avenue mansions had been demolished. The fortune was spent, displayed, divided, extinguished. The Vanderbilts followed every rule the visible game gave them. Earn, spend, display, repeat. And the visible game consumed them exactly as it was designed to do. Now consider Henry Phipps, Jr. You have almost certainly never heard his name. Phipps was Andrew Carnegie's business partner. When Carnegie Steel sold to J.P. Morgan in 1901, Phipps walked away with a sum so vast the newspapers of his era struggled to find a comparison for it. But Phipps did something the Vanderbilts never considered. In 1907, before he bought the mansion, before the charitable donations, before any visible display of wealth, he established the Bessemer Trust, a family office with a single mandate: manage, protect, and perpetuate the Phipps family wealth for generations not yet born. He built the architecture before he built anything else. Today, over 115 years later, Bessemer Trust manages more than $100 billion. The Phipps family still controls it. A direct descendant serves as chairman. The fortune has not only survived, it has multiplied across 6 generations. And you have never seen a Phipps on a magazine cover. You could walk past a Phipps in an airport and never know. That is not humility. That is architecture. That is the strategy. The difference between the Vanderbilts and the Phippses is not intelligence, is not work ethic, is not luck, is that one family built a fortress, and the other family built a display case. Machiavelli wrote it 500 years ago. Few experience what you really are. The Phippses understood. The Vanderbilts announced what they were to the entire world and were dismantled for it. Most people build wealth backward. They spend decades chasing income while their assets sit naked. Every property in their name. Every account discoverable. Every dollar connected by a legal fuse. Touch one, and the fire spreads to everything. Then they try to protect what they have built, which is like building walls around a castle after the army is already through the gates. The families that survive centuries do the reverse. They build the fortress first. The money comes second, and by the time the money arrives, it has nowhere to go except deeper into the fortress. There is a reason this strategy has never been taught to you. The financial system you live inside generates its revenue from your activity, from your trading, from your management fees, from your visibility. A quiet, invisible, perfectly structured fortune generates almost no fees for anyone except the family that owns it. The system does not profit from teaching you the real game. It profits from keeping you inside the visible game. Stay with me for the next 26 minutes, and I will show you the entire architecture. 5 layers. Some legal, some psychological, some so counterintuitive that most people reject them on first hearing. By the end, you will know more about how wealth actually works than the financial advisor who manages your parents' retirement account. Not because the strategy is complicated, because it was hidden. And once you see it, you cannot ignore it. The first thing you must understand is that control and ownership are 2 entirely different legal concepts. The middle class is taught to hold everything in their own name. The house, the brokerage account, the business. This feels secure. The appearance of ownership. But Machiavelli would recognize it instantly as the generosity trap. In chapter 16 of The Prince, he argues that generosity is self-destructive. To maintain the appearance of generosity, the prince must eventually tax his people and seize their property. In attempting to appear generous to the few, he makes enemies of the many. The same logic governs wealth. The appearance of direct ownership makes you feel powerful. It also makes you visible, and visible means targetable. Old money does the opposite. They do not hold assets directly. They hold entities. Those entities hold the assets. The family controls the entity. The space between control and ownership, that legal gap, is where fortunes survive. This is not reserved for billionaires. If you own a rental property in your name, and someone sues you, they can take that property. And your personal savings, and your house, and your car. Every asset wearing your name is connected by fuse wire. If you hold that same rental inside a properly structured entity, the lawsuit stops at the entity's walls. The rest of your life is untouched. This costs less than $1,000 to set up, and almost nobody does it. Now scale that thinking across centuries. In 1983, South Dakota abolished the rule against perpetuities. A dynasty trust in South Dakota, properly structured, can exist forever. No expiration. No mandatory dissolution. It can hold assets, compound investments, and distribute income to descendants in perpetuity without ever paying estate tax. Because the trust never dies. You do. Your 401k does. A dynasty trust in South Dakota does not. Read that again, because it sounds backwards. The retirement account you were told was your most important financial vehicle has a lifespan. A legal document in South Dakota does not. The Rockefeller Trust was established in 1899. It has survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the 2008 financial crisis, and roughly 140 descendants across 7 generations. The trust does not answer to any single Rockefeller. The Rockefellers' answer to the trust. Richard Rockefeller, the late patriarch, once said something that contains more financial wisdom than an entire MBA curriculum. The family's wealth was never really theirs. They were simply stewards of it for the next generation. The invisible vault is not complicated. It is deliberate. And the reason nobody taught it to you is because every dollar inside a properly structured entity is a dollar that generates zero fees for the financial system that depends on your activity. Machiavelli's most quoted line is also his most misunderstood. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Most people interpret this as advice to deceive. It is not. It is advice to control perception. Your appearance is for the world. Your reality is for yourself and your inner circle. Confuse the two and you lose both. There is a behavioral phenomenon the wealthy understand that almost nobody discusses. Forbes published an analysis in 2023 titled Stealth Wealth, Old Money Aesthetics, and the Psychology of the 1%. The author identified two distinct signaling strategies. The newly rich signal vertically, downward, toward lower social classes, using loud, recognizable brand markers. The Rolex with the visible logo. The car with the badge on the front grille. The point is being seen as wealthy by people who are not. Old money signals horizontally, sideways, to their peers, using quiet cues that require knowledge to decode. A specific tailor in Naples whose name never appears in advertising. A cashmere mill in Scotland that produces for only a handful of families. A watch with zero visible branding that another collector identifies from across the room. The point is being recognized by those who already belong, and invisible to everyone else. Here is the counterintuitive truth. The newly rich signal their wealth to people who can do nothing for them. Old money signals their wealth only to people who can. The BBC documented this shift in a 2017 investigation titled The New, Subtle Ways the Rich Signal Their Wealth. Their finding was that the top 1% are increasingly spending on things that are invisible. Education, preventative health care, retirement security. The mansion on the hill has been replaced by the trust fund nobody can see. The sports car by the private school endowment. The designer wardrobe by the legal architecture that ensures the wealth outlives the spender. This is not about modesty. Modesty is a personality trait. This is about strategy. The less visible your wealth, the fewer hands reach for it. The fewer lawsuits target it. The fewer family members fight over it. The fewer journalists write about it. The fewer politicians propose taxes on it. Visibility is a liability. And old money families have known this for centuries. Before I give you the next layer, I want you to notice something. You have now heard two principles, the invisible vault and the appearance doctrine, that together form a foundation of how real wealth is built and preserved. Your financial advisor has never mentioned either of them to you. Not because your advisor is a bad person, because your advisor works inside the visible game. The professional education, the licensing, the compliance department, the products they are permitted to sell, all of it exists inside the machine. Your advisor cannot recommend a dynasty trust because your advisor is paid to manage assets. And assets inside a dynasty trust are not managed by your advisor. They are managed by the trust. The machine does not reward advisors for making you invisible. It rewards them for keeping you visible. Pause this video. Look at your own assets. How many of them wear your name directly? How many are connected to each other by legal fuse wire? How long would it take a determined lawsuit to find everything you have? Write down the answer. Now I will show you the third layer. The one that separates families who survive one generation from families who survive 10. There is a mistake almost every first-generation wealth builder makes. They think in years. Old money thinks in centuries. The average investor holds a stock for less than 12 months. The average financial plan projects 30 years. The average dynasty trust in South Dakota has no expiration date. Time is not just an advantage. Time is a weapon. And the visible game has weaponized it against you while convincing you that you are using it. Compound interest is always described as your friend. But compound interest works identically for the management fees on your accounts. While your money compounds at 7%, the 1% fee compounds alongside it. Over 40 years, that 1% fee consumes approximately 28% of your total returns. Not 1%, 28%. The machine does not advertise this. Old money does not pay management fees on assets held inside family-controlled entities. The trust does not charge itself 1%. The family office exists to serve the family, not to extract revenue from it. But the time weapon goes deeper than fees. When you measure wealth in centuries, you make different decisions. You do not chase quarterly returns. You do not panic during recessions. You do not sell assets to fund lifestyle. You acquire assets that compound across generations. Timberland, private businesses, real estate in locations that have been valuable for 300 years and will be valuable for 300 more. The visible game taught you to measure wealth by your annual salary. Old money measures wealth by what survives your grandchildren's. These are not the same measurement system. They are not even the same game. I want to pause here and tell you something uncomfortable. The greatest threat to your wealth is not the government, is not the economy, is not a market crash or a lawsuit or a bad investment. The greatest threat to your wealth is your own children. The Williams Group, a wealth consultancy, conducted a 20-year study tracking over 3,200 wealthy families. 70% lose their wealth by the second generation. 90% by the third. The reason is almost never bad investments. Is heirs who were never prepared. The founders spent decades building the fortune, but never spent a single year teaching the children how to steward it. The money arrived in their hands as a gift, not as a responsibility, and it was treated accordingly. Old money families understand this with brutal clarity. They do not give wealth to children. They train children to serve the wealth. The trust is the owner. The child is a beneficiary. The child has rights, distributions, access, security. But the child does not have control. This sounds cold. It is cold. It is also the reason the Phipps fortune survived 115 years and the Vanderbilt fortune did not survive 50. The Vanderbilts gave their children money. The Phippses gave their children a role. You cannot build a fortress and then hand the keys to someone who was never taught to guard it. The architecture protects against outsiders. Only preparation protects against insiders. This brings us to the layer almost nobody discusses. The wealthiest families on earth do not operate as families. They operate as institutions. They have governance structures, family councils, investment committees, written constitutions that dictate how decisions are made, how disputes are resolved, and how wealth transfers between generations. The family is not a collection of individuals with money. The family is a corporation that happens to share DNA. Machiavelli understood this distinction 500 years ago. The prince must build institutions that outlive him. The prince is mortal. The institution is not. A prince who rules through personal authority leaves chaos when he dies. A prince who rules through institutions leaves a system. The same principle applies to wealth. If a strategy exists only inside your head, it dies with you. If it exists inside a document, a trust, a family constitution, a governance structure, it survives you. It survives your children. It survives the one descendant who might otherwise have destroyed everything. The visible game teaches you to be the hero of your financial story, the genius investor, the savvy entrepreneur, the self-made success. Old money teaches you to be invisible in your own story, the architect, not the monument, the builder of the institution, not the face on its wall. There is a Swedish man you have probably seen without knowing it. Ingvar Kamprad founded IKEA in 1943. At the time of his death in 2018, his net worth was estimated at approximately $58 billion. Kamprad drove a 1993 Volvo 240. He flew economy. He furnished his home with IKEA products. He once told an interviewer that he bought his clothes at flea markets so he could save money. The media framed this as eccentric frugality, a quirky billionaire who could not let go of his modest roots. This was not frugality. This was the appearance doctrine operating at its highest level. Kamprad's wealth was not in his name. It was held inside a labyrinth of Dutch and Liechtenstein foundations so complex that business journalists spent decades trying to map it. The Volvo was the visible layer. The 58 billion was the invisible vault. And the two were deliberately, permanently separated. No journalist ever photographed Kamprad's actual wealth, because his actual wealth did not exist in any form that could be photographed. Read that again. You have been trained to perform wealth. The car, the house, the watch, the vacation photos. Every visible marker of success is also a signal to the machine. Here I am. Here is what I have. Come and take your share. Old money was trained to hide wealth, not out of modesty, out of strategy. The less visible you are, the smaller the target. The fewer the lawsuits. The quieter the family disputes. The lower the tax scrutiny, the weaker the political appetite for wealth taxes. Invisibility is not a lifestyle choice. It is a financial defense. And the people who taught you to display your success never mentioned that. There's one more thing. Something I have hinted at but not said directly. The wealthiest families on earth never make their money the most interesting thing about them. The Rockefellers are known for philanthropy. The Phippses are known for nothing. And that is exactly the point. The Waltons are known for Walmart, not for their personal fortunes. The Kamprad family is known for IKEA. The money hides behind the purpose. This is not accidental. It is the final, most sophisticated layer of the strategy. The purpose provides the public narrative. The trust provides the private architecture. The public sees the foundation. The private controls the fortune. And the two are legally, permanently separated. If your money is the most interesting thing about you, your money will eventually be taken from you. By lawsuits, by taxes, by family disputes, by journalists, by politicians, by anyone who can make a claim on what is visible. If your purpose is the most interesting thing about you, your money becomes infrastructure. It serves quietly in the background. It compounds. It grows. It transfers. It survives. Nobody photographs infrastructure. Nobody sues infrastructure. Nobody campaigns against infrastructure. It simply exists. And it continues. Before I give you the final shift, I want you to write something down. Every old money family asks 4 questions before making any financial decision. These questions have been passed down through generations. Not in books. Not in courses. In family offices behind closed doors, in rooms the public never sees. Question 1. Does this make us more visible or less visible? Question 2. Does this transfer control to someone outside the family? Question 3. Does this solve a problem that will still exist in 50 years? Question 4. Does the next generation understand why we are doing this? That is it. For questions. No spreadsheets. No Monte Carlo simulations. No 60-page financial plans. For questions that filter every decision through the lens of architecture, not accumulation. The visible game taught you to ask different questions. How much can I earn? What is my rate of return? When can I retire? Those questions produce visible wealth, which produces visible targets, which produces visible losses. These 4 questions produce invisible wealth, which produces invisible security, which produces multi-generational survival. You came into this video measuring wealth by what you could see, and now you understand. It was never about what you could see. It was about what nobody else could. Here is the thing the visible game never wanted you to understand. The money is not the point. The money is what the fortress produces. The fortress is the strategy, the legal architecture, the governance structure, the family constitution, the appearance doctrine, the discretion habit, the century scale timeline. These things together are the fortress. The money that flows through it is just output. Once the fortress is built, the money has nowhere to go except deeper into the fortress. It compounds. It multiplies. It survives recessions, wars, political changes, and the passage of time itself. Not because the investments were brilliant, because the architecture was designed to survive everything. Most people spend their entire lives chasing output. Old money families spend their lives building the machine that produces the output. One approach makes you tired. The other makes you permanent. You are no longer someone who earns money. You are someone who architects wealth. Read that again. Because once you make this shift, everything changes. The 401k stops being your primary wealth vehicle. It becomes a single tool among many, and not the most important one. The paid-off house stops being the finish line. It becomes a visible asset that still wears your name. The salary stops being the measurement. It becomes the raw material. You start thinking about entities. You start thinking about governance. You start thinking about what survives your grandchildren. You stop playing the visible game, and you start building the invisible fortress. The architecture is here. The blueprints are in your hands. The 5 layers are mapped. The 4 questions are written. The invisible vault. The appearance doctrine. Time as a weapon. The family as institution. Discretion. You now know more about how wealth actually works than 99% of the people who will give you financial advice for the rest of your life. The question is not whether the strategy works. The question is whether you will stop playing the game that was handed to you. If this is the first time you have heard these ideas, understand something. You were supposed to go your entire life without hearing them. The machine depends on your ignorance, and you just took the first step out of it. If you want the next layer, the specific legal structures, the entity types, the jurisdictional strategies, the implementation roadmap, subscribe. Because this channel is just beginning. The fortress is waiting. Will you build it?